Today we're going to talk about fanboys. The disease of fanboys, the real fanboys, the fake fanboys, and how this sentiment of group thought is destroying everything that's great in the world and fueling everything that sucks. And, if you think this is a gimmicky episode, I want to encourage you to stay on board because this is actually extremely important for all of us. If you're not familiar with the word fanboy, I'm going to explain that too. It goes something like this. And it's utterly been fueled and catalyzed by the internet. For those of you involved with, trying to make the world better through perhaps product loyalty or product encouragement, you're the kind of person to buy a product and you really love it, or you really wanted to love it, and in your brain there's just a little tweak that would really make the difference, or you own the competitor product that really does everything that you want, but you bought a maybe slightly cheaper product and they almost have it but they can't quite match it up, and you go online and you're like, all I want to do is just say, I really enjoyed the product, but this and this is just not doing it for me. I really hope that they can get to that part of the product, right? And then someone replies, if the forum you're discussing this in has replies, which is usually everywhere on the internet. They get in there and they say extremely derogatory things, personal attacks against you. I see this all the time. I get involved with it myself. But they lambast you for suggesting for a split second that you would alter the corporate charter, objective, direction of the product. And you're shocked. You're just someone is basically keeping yesterday or a lack of features that really matter in place. But then you realize as you continue the process, it's not just one reply to one person. There's a whole band of people that seem to be brand loyalists or movement loyalists, right? They group together and essentially bully everyone online into not suggesting basically not suggesting any change to what's going on at the company that you're discussing. And we call those fanboys. They don't have an identity of their own. Their identity has been externalized into a brand. You get these in all walks in life, all brands in life. And you simply, because they don't have an identity of themselves, right? What they have done is they have made themselves in their own mind the brand that you're discussing. And so when you suggest anything changes, they take it personal and they believe it's you criticizing them. And in their mind, their model of the world is that they are perfect already, and that you can't suggest any improvements because then you'd be suggesting a difference in them and perhaps a flaw in them. Now, some of these guys are real on the internet, but I'm going to wager that over 51% of them are fake. How does a fanboy become fake? Fanboys become fake when big giant corporations hire public relations firms, otherwise known as PR firms, to go out and campaign on behalf of the brand itself. Some PR firms are employed by the localized countrymen of the brand, meaning if it's an American brand, they hire American PR firms, and they have cognizant college graduates who get in there and really engage deeply and defend against the brand. And then you have PR firms that are more global, and what they do is they take the college-educated kids here in America, and they write tens of thousands of responses that are valid, and they pass it to Chinese firms, they pass it to Indian firms and other third world countries and say, when you see these keywords, cut and paste this in, pick one. Some PR firms are smart enough and they hire experts like me to write bots, and the bots go page to page and scrape all the text off the page, and they look for pattern recognition, and then they go in and pretend to be a user and spit a reply inside of a response. Now, I've never done that personally for any type of internet stuff, but I've definitely done page scraping technology to harvest data. And just putting it back into the page is not a big deal. You just have to study the anatomy of the page, study the field names, and you can scrape everything and put it back in. Most of you have seen movie reviews. Yahoo movie reviews are typically pretty bad, in that the PR firms that are hired from the film agencies, film studios, they go in and they say all this canned stuff about the movie. Seemingly have never, they can't make a single comment about the film, anything. Like they'll comment about Star Wars, but they won't say anything about the film. You'll never hear a reference to Han Solo or somebody. And you'll find the same comments as accolades from one film in another film. I think forums are getting sort of hip to this, and that if you have a really low count of posts, meaning a fresh robot created account, they're pulling the results out of the actual tally of what their opinion is, because they realize this could just be a ruse, right? I gotta take this jacket off. It's getting so warm out here. Can you believe this? Yesterday I was freezing my butt off. So why is this a problem? Isn't this just your narrator getting frustrated at people not agreeing with him? And the answer is absolutely not, because I don't think these human beings are real in most cases. For those that are real, those are the ones I'm really concerned about. But on the show, we've actually tried to heighten your awareness of broadcast speak. When you watch any news agency in the world, right? They don't talk to you in the tone that I'm talking to you right now. I am talking to you exactly like I would talk to you if you were sitting where the camera is right now, and we were just sharing a cigar on this porch. And I think that that's super important. If I am not genuine with you, there's no reason for you to ever tune into this show ever again. And that's my promise to you, is that right or wrong, deluded or right on the money, I will always be as honest with you and as genuine with you as I can possibly be. And if I make mistakes too, I cover super scientific things, and I'm trying to quote out of thin air, right? I sit down and I do this, and I'm not sitting with a bunch of notes in front of me, so everything that's coming out of my brain is usually just out of my memory, and sometimes I get things wrong. There's two policies I'm going to put in place. If a video gets extremely inaccurate after I do post research on anything I say, I'll take it down and redo it. If I can just make minor annotations in the videos using the YouTube interface, I'll do that. Now, I apologize to you coming through a podcast. There's nothing I can do besides take it down and re-record the episode, or take it completely down, because I don't want to have the podcast be out of sync with the video. If you listen to a podcast and you are very frustrated with my level of accuracy in a particular subject, you might go on YouTube and see if I haven't annotated that mistake out. Like the Mars mission, I had a great listener come in and make a lot of critiques and correct some of the things I was saying. Some of them are variable things. You can choose two answers, and I picked the wrong answer. Other ones I just said the wrong thing. I said that the Mars was 100,000 times further away than the moon, and at its furthest distance is 1,000 times. I got 3 more zeros on there I shouldn't have, right? Big mistake on my part. So I'm trying to annotate the videos to kind of correct when I have time and the energy to do a video again about the same exact subject, covering the same exact thing. I'll get to it. So Fanboys, here's my background with Fanboys. In terms of my opinion of why it's very, very important that we get rid of this. For the same reason, I don't want you to watch television and watch CNN or Fox, BBC, any normal news outlet. I don't want you to watch that, any of your local news, simply for no other reason other than pumping the global propaganda. I don't want you to be talked to like you're an idiot, and I don't want you to get used to being talked to like an idiot, and I want you to absolutely refuse to be talked to like an idiot for the rest of your life. For the rest of your life. The only person I'm gonna suggest you allow that would be your children, who are growing up and figuring out how to communicate with you as an adult, and perhaps your grandparents or old people who simply have an old technique of communication. We don't need to be rude to either one of those sectors. Those are real, genuine people just misunderstanding how to communicate. But they mean well. But your broadcast news speak has got to be cut out of your life, just like a cancer. That's just my suggestion, right? Now, I have been privileged in my life to grow up with, I would say, a father who has, to this day, he has taste. He has style. And he raised me with that taste and that style, that discerning gene that said, this is wine and this is fine wine, right? This is music and this is fine music. In every genre of music, he would say, this is R&B and this is R&B, you know? And what that did for me is it created in me an awareness of the difference between effort and no effort. And I have found that in my life, those who are I am utterly blessed in my life that most of the mentors I grew up with admiring in whatever, we wouldn't have the internet, but, admired in my walk of life, the films that I love, the special effects that I love, the production design that I love, the music that I loved as a kid. I have been blessed now to make friends with those people and call them my closest friends in life. And in doing so, I wasn't going to, I'll put it this way, I wasn't able to be friends with them. I don't think I would have been able to be friends with them had I been this obtuse-minded person that liked everything. Now, what's funny is I probably like slightly more than my mentors. What's that mean? Well, I think within every genre of everything, you can usually find something that is fairly mind-blowing. Meaning, I grew up in the Midwest, and so I wasn't a huge fan of country music because it was around me constantly. Now, I definitely went through my John Denver phase as a little kid. But as I grew up, it was sort of like that was the pattern that I always had in my life, so it was never unique to me. And later in life, I kind of grew into it, and I always loved the blues. I always loved Stevie Ray Vaughan and all the original blues musicians from the 40s and 50s. But my mentors are slightly more focused, which they are focused, so they become that they're at the tip of the spear of the amazing thing in their genre. So they are the thing that everyone who has a discerning mind says, this guy's the best designer of futuristic stuff on planet Earth. This guy's one of the best drummers on planet Earth, right? And so on and so forth, right? The ability to discern fine things from average things is extremely important to the future of mankind, because the fabric of a fascist society is reducing the educational awareness of individuals such that they cannot discern anything different from something else. The product that was just cheaply made and quickly made and didn't have a lot of heart and soul put into it is not the same as the one that was labored on for months and years. I've been in some fancy cars in my lifetime. I've both driven them and I've ridden in them. But this last 3 months, I've been exposed to a Lamborghini Hurricane, 2015 Lamborghini white, Hurricane. I got to drive it several times, and I will tell you that I have been utterly and completely transformed about what a fine car is constructed to look like, how it operates, the brain power that actually makes a vehicle, but feels like it comes from another planet. I don't usually allow material objects to inspire me much. When I came to California as a kid at 17, I was from the Midwest, and I was driving up and down the PCH Highway, Pacific Coast Highway, looking at all these Malibu mansions. There's beautiful cars everywhere, beautiful everything everywhere. And I was really inspired to get my act together as a kid to get those physical possessions. And as I grew up, I really started to realize what was wealth, and it was really just the people around me and the comfort of my life. And so it's been a very long time since I've had an inanimate object inspire me. And I will tell you right now, getting in the cockpit of a Lamborghini, and there's a ton of them in where I live, right? It's not like it's it still makes you turn your head no matter what, but there's certain Lamborghinis that are duplicated like crazy around this area, and then there's this one, and I don't own it. It's just a phenomenal experience, and it reminded me of my past. It reminded me of almost 30 years ago. It's like I've been in California now 29 years. So one more year, I will have been in this state for 30 years. To California. But anyway, the reason why I mention that is that there are things worth preserving in mankind. When mankind manages to have either the originator of the product. Now, Lamborghini didn't invent the car, right? But their passion for vehicle design is unlike anything I've ever seen. You get inside one of these cars, and the dashboard itself looks like a spaceship. I mean, it looks like if we were to make a sci-fi movie and just take the switches off the dashboard of a Lamborghini and put them in the Apollo 99 or whatever, you would totally buy it. I mean, it is like the coolest space age looking thing you've ever had. It rides beautifully. It's got a super wide windshield. The engine just sounds like it's an animal just trying to get out of the bars. I mean, it's just unbelievable, right? You can believe the hype. In fact, I don't even think the hype is remotely close enough to the car to really match what's going on. And there are some products in life like this. And they're usually at the forefront of innovation. And they usually go through cycles. Who knows where Lamborghini will be 20 years from now? I happen to think they'll be fine. But what if I get into a car and I have this amazing experience, and it is utterly perfect. It redefines what it means to be inside of a luxury car. And then 10 years from now, I buy my own. Or I go to the dealership and I sit inside and I'm like, wow, this hasn't changed in 10 years. The body style hasn't changed in 10 years. The engine, if it sounded the same in 10 years, you probably wouldn't be too upset. But let's just say, somehow, the brass at Lamborghini doesn't make a new design. They live in yesterday, which that company absolutely does not live in yesterday. But what if that happened? I might go online. I might write a letter, whatever. Usually if you write a letter, you get a respectful reply if you get one at all. But I go online and I say, I remember this car 10 years ago. It was space age. It was amazing. And you had choices. You had multiple models you could buy. And someone comes up on the forum and tries to tell me why living in yesterday is okay. Why I have simply overreacted with my passion for fine automobile craftsmanship. What's going on there when that happens? Well, I can tell you right now, the longevity of the Lamborghini brand at that point would be in jeopardy. The car Corvette. Every kid in the 70s, just in case you didn't live in the 70s, was a massive fan of Corvettes. Every kid wanted one. Now no kid wants one, really. The Corvette has been allowed to be sort of a grandpa brand. And the reason why it's turned into an utter grandpa brand is because for nearly 20 years, the heads of state at Corvette were lazy people. And I once sat on a plane ride for 3.5 hours with one of the head Corvette executives, one of the top salesmen of Corvette. And he was doing regional, dealership pitches and that kind of thing. And I it's probably late 90s, and I said, I remember when I was a kid in the 70s, you guys used to release the most incredible concept cars on planet Earth. Like, you showed us what a car was going to look like in 2000. In 2007, I think they even did one really odd. And I said, that never happened. And I said, now your car hasn't changed much since 1983 when you introduced the new body. You just have barely done anything to it at all. And now the only people who drive your car are old farts with gray hair. They look completely out of their element inside this hot car, right? Hot cars are supposed to be young males trying to solicit the best female, obviously a materialistic female, but nevertheless, that was the image. Mark Hamill, who plays Luke Skywalker, was in a movie called Corvette Summer in the 70s, and I mean, I tell you, like, everybody wanted that car, and it was from the age of 9 up. Like, you wanted the Hot Wheel, you wanted the model, you wanted to see one on the street. It was phenomenal. And by 1990, no one turns their head ever at that car. It is like an old Cadillac SRS, right? You know what the guy told me? This is standard American bullshit. The guy tells me Well, you know what? We sell every single one that drives off the lot. Oh, okay. Well, I guess you should just put the 22 in your mouth and pull the trigger then, because life's just not going to get any better than this, right? I mean, I honestly want to call this guy every name in the book right now, but I won't. But boy, it's on the tip of my tongue. Every single horrible, dirty word that I know, I want to stick up that guy's butt. But I won't do it. Corvette is an American brand. It is an American invention. It is an American institution. And to have a piece of crap like that working for the company with that stupid attitude was literally lock and key with the 90s. Mediocrity and substandard everything. That guy was an entitled, yuppie piece of crap who didn't have any pride in his blood. He was a salesman who lived off a commission check, and that's all he cared about was me, me, me. Not the greater picture of the brand itself, the future of the brand, but what happened? Well, some asshole's going to argue with me on this. Save your breath, dude. After 2000, the brand started to sell a lot less cars. It wasn't the sexy brand anymore. And then Corvette realized by about 2010, we need to pull our head out of our ass and build an amazing car. They did it before that, but the car starts releasing in 2010. And there was a couple awesome models. I don't even know what the hell they're called, but I was in Lake Havasu. And we were all pulling the boat out of the area where I'm having to follow the truck and the boat, and we just gassed it up, and we're just heading off to the lake. And I remember following this crazy bright yellow Corvette, and I had no idea what this car was. It looked so unbelievably futuristic, and I think they only made a few of this particular model. And I was just, my jaw was on the ground. I was like, what is this car? It's not perfect in design, but it's a hell of a lot better than anything I've seen in a long time. And finally figured out it was a Corvette when I saw the front end. I was like, no kidding, man. I didn't follow that brand anymore. Who would? And now I think they've got a series of models right now that turn my head. You know, I have no inspiration to buy one because of the old man factor and because they've driven the price of the car up ridiculously up to like Porsche levels, right? My dad used to sell cars in the 70s and early 80s, and I remember looking up once the price of a collector's edition two-tone Stingray, I think a 79-ish, and I think the car was under 10 grand. That was a collector's edition version of the car. And now that car is 80 to 100 grand, depending on the demand for the car, and they put the extra sticker on top, right? Now, this is about Fanboys. And I sort of went off on a, the ground up build up of this whole thing. But right now, what I see are brands that I love that are traditionally the leading brands of innovation. Brands that I must live in, and you must live in too. They're the Fanboy, which you could also call soy boy realm, is starting to get alarmingly high. Apple Computer right now, which I run both platforms, but mainly Apple because I program in Unix most of the time, or on Unix platforms. They used to be an incredibly innovative company. At least, obviously, when Steve Jobs was alive and when he was participating at the company. But even when he wasn't part of the company, there was at least a good, probably 6 years after 1985, from about 85 to 92, where they made a bunch of stupid mistakes and lost their market share. But at least the operating system did things that the Windows operating system didn't do. But now Apple's into a bunch of sectors, right? They're into laptops, they're into desktops, they're into iPhones, iPads, TVs. A lot of amazing products in that company. But they are also a company that has hired probably the most PR firms on planet Earth to protect their brand. And I'm going to mention them because I think they're at the forefront of greatness. And they have been at the forefront of greatness for at least the last decade and a half. At least. I think really probably almost 2 decades now, because the iMac, debuts, I believe, in, 98? I think either it's 96 to 98. I think it took Steve a couple of years to get that through the pipeline. But their innovation has always driven the competition to get better. And in the mid-90s, when Apple looked like it was about to be utterly assassinated by Gil Amelio, If you want to see example of a CEO that had no business being on stage and ever giving a presentation to any other body of human beings, go look up Gil Amelio's speeches. In fact, look up the YouTube video of Steve Jobs' return to Apple. There's a big presentation where Gil introduces Steve, and the contrast between the two men when Gil just meanders and is almost illiterate on stage, just can't speak a sentence without a bunch of ums and ahs and oohs and just great. And then Steve walks on stage and starts speaking fluently and genuinely. You got Gil, who's full of shit, broadcast speak, condescending mind speak, and then you have Steve that treats you like an equal, all in one setting. It's amazing. But the world got better when Steve came around. Microsoft had entirely and utterly missed the internet. The forces down on Microsoft were probably saying something like, because it's a government organization, right? They say, don't help the people get on the internet. It's a problem for us. Information's going to spread, and there's going to be major repercussions to our control apparatus. So, Microsoft just kept ignoring it, right? Well, Apple comes out with the iMac, an internet computer. That's what it was, an internet Macintosh. Just plug and play. Plug it in the wall, plug in your modem, had all the software to get you connected to all the big carriers in the world. Just put your credit card in, and boom, you're on the internet. And we didn't know what to do. When the internet first started, you didn't know where to go. There were search engines and stuff, but you just didn't know where to go. You were having a blast just exploring a new frontier of online. It took us 2 or 3 years for our brains to catch up with the paradigm of what we were looking at. What the hell is this? Well, you bring up this thing called a web browser. What's a web browser? I don't know. Geez, it browses, and what's this web thing? I'm totally confused. It took years for people to come up to speed with what the hell they were talking about. And look what happened in less than 20 years. People consider web access part of their their red blood supply, right? Blue blood supply. It's pretty funny. The Apple operating system had become horrible, antiquated, slow. Even though it had more features than Windows, it could connect to a computer, or it could connect to a printer online 2 seconds. It really just didn't have the bullshit title of it on there. It was a file server. It didn't have multitasking. It crashed a lot. It was horrible. And then he brings the next operating system in and calls it OS X. And it takes them probably a decade to get that really on most of our computers, because all the software wasn't over there, and it was just really weird. It was really different. But eventually we realized, wow, running Unix on our machine is amazing. Multitasking. I mean, you put 10 processors in, 10 processors get talked to. I mean, it was phenomenal, right? For those of us who program in Unix, we program on our home computers in Unix and then just move the files to a Unix server, and there was no recoding whatsoever. The path on a file server had to be updated, but that was about it. And if you program correctly, even that was dynamic. Then you got the iPod. I've said on the show a long time ago that I completely misunderstood the value of the iPod, and that's probably the most professional short-sightedness I've had in my entire career. And the reason why I had a problem with it was that I had gone through several music players. Right, from the disc ones that read CDs to the ones that were RAM-based. I had just bought a $100 one that was RAM-based that could hold about 30 songs, right? And it just died in nothing flat. It died within a couple months. And, it was just junk technology. But there were 30 players on the market when the iPod came out, and I thought Steve was crazy. And I didn't think the iPod actually looked that cool when I first saw it. The way you see it today is the way I saw it the first day. Just wasn't elegant to me. It looked like a clunky piece of white plastic. But boy, did I underestimate that. Steve knew where he needed to be, and I didn't realize that it wasn't just an iPod. It was the iTunes library married to the iPod. Now, I wasn't a big Napster fan, which is where you could get all your music for free illegally, but I definitely was there to support artists by paying money. I always felt like that's something that needed to happen. Certainly didn't like the encryption on my music, but I dealt with it. But the iPod made Apple so much money that it actually pulled the entire company out of the dark ages. Now, he had already repaired all of the consumer laptop, desktop. He only made 2 models. He had repaired the professional side of laptops, desktops. But it still didn't repair the cash flow problems at Apple until this iPod thing came around and utterly blew the doors off of everything. Next one up was the iPhone. Now, we all know what phones looked like before the iPhone. They looked absolutely nothing like the phones you have in your hands today. And now every single phone that you hold in your hands today looks like an iPhone. And obviously it's a combination of brilliant minds at Apple, but it's also Steve's polish on everything, that he made executive decisions at the tippy top of that design process that you can now see. What you can now see right now at Apple is that the line that if you've ever believed the line that's, well, Steve isn't all of Apple. Well, Steve wasn't the only guy making great decisions, and Steve is just faking that he's the genius at the front, which he never really tried to say that in the first place, but that's his reputation. You can now unequivocally put to bed that argument. Steve was Apple. Steve was the difference of why everything was fantastic at Apple versus being the Gil Amelio Apple that was headed down to a fiery grave, right? Now, was Steve perfect? Hell no, man. He made a little innovative thing called the Cube, which completely tanked, and then all that architecture became the Apple TV, which is now one of the coolest experiences on planet Earth. If you don't own an Apple TV, you're missing out huge. There is an Amazon Fire one that's pretty darn cool as well. I will say that. But now the new Apple TV is a game console as well. It's brilliant. I couldn't believe it. I bought one for a friend and started using the control as a steering wheel. I couldn't believe it. I was playing this HD racing game, and within 2 seconds, the game was free. And there's just tons of apps that are coming for that unit. It's going to be incredible. And consequently, 15 years ago, I told Steve exactly how to make that box a game console, which is pretty funny. Then the next one up was the iPad. Now, I struggled with the iPad because I knew that the iPod was an eventuality, right? We're all going to have these little Star Trek pads, Thank you, Gene Roddenberry and company, for inventing the iPad on Star Trek Next Generation, right? We did have the Newton back in the day. Don't think I don't know all the history of that stuff. I was completely unimpressed by the iPad demonstration by Steve. I think he was starting to get ill, started losing his energy. When he sat down at the little chair on stage and sort of just slowed down the presentation, I was bored to death. The iPad struggled with its original software. It just wasn't quite as impressive as the unit was hardware-wise, right? But in the end, like all Apple products, they take off and make it happen, right? Now we have a company that is waning heavily. We have now seen the iPhone essentially not upgrade for the last probably, I would say, 4 major iterations. Its only innovative moment was its original model, and the rest has all just been polished since then. The operating system itself is now half a decade behind Android, and Android is just keeping the pressure on, man. Android just keeps getting better and faster. I will tell you right now, I believe it is the policy of Apple to patch all your devices to be intentionally slower. I believe they do it in 2 different ways, and they do it legally. But I think that if you guys get smart and start passing this around, Apple will lean off the technique a little bit, but they patch the ROMs of your devices so that you can't just roll back the operating system through the original disks. And they essentially create inefficient loops of code, inefficient distribution models within the operating system to slow you down. And this forces you to get a brand new device. They do it in all of their devices, laptops, desktops, iPhones, and iPads. It's reprehensible, and I hope that there's a class action lawsuit that robs $10 billion out of their pockets to make it really hurt that they would ever do this to their customers. You've heard me talk about it on the show before, but at one point, typing on a telephone, let's just put it this way, typing a text message on a telephone should never in your lifetime, for the rest of your lifetime, if they never improve the processors in an iPhone, should never ever be anything other than an instantaneous process. Word wrapping, typing, bringing up the interface, bringing up that application, there's virtually no code executing at all, but they have managed to patch these units down so badly that you can barely do it after two. It's not really how many operating system upgrades cause the problem, but it's how many models have released after you bought your model. So once it's 2 models out, they go back and patch your computer. When the operating systems come out, you'll have a bunch of security patches for your previous computer. I'm going to tell you right now, they are patching your computer slower. I run incredible diagnostics software on my computer. I study the efficiency of my processors, all the network transmissions, all the hard disk transmissions every second I'm using my computer. And I can tell you that the efficiency of the operating system deteriorates incredibly. What happens on the Android phone? Well, my Android's now 2 years old. And the last patch they put on my Android about 8 months ago, I can tell you that the video games that I was playing on my Android that stuttered horribly, the frame rate stuttered, it loaded slowly, it automatically became as smooth as glass. So Android's in it to win it, and Apple's in it to lose it. Now, the reason why I mention all that background is that you'll understand where I'm going to go with the Fanboy thing. The Fanboys are essentially these giant weights that hold down the future. By them protesting so much about how your critiques of yesteryear's innovation is a bad idea, or trying to take a lack of innovation and forge it as real innovation, they remove the demand for those companies to ever be great again. Now, most of you know that once there's no competition, the company that's at the forefront of that particular genre lacks innovation. They cease to innovate. And why? Because they don't have to. Remember, a corporation without its leader turns into a headless snake of inequity, of obsolescence. For those of you who are very loyal Windows users, and I was in Windows at 2.1, okay, in 1987. Database company I worked for actually released on 1.0. Windows was tearing up the Macs in the late 80s, early 90s, and up to Windows 95, right? Now, still the Mac can do things that the Windows couldn't do. Find a printer on a network computers together very easily with just one cable. You just had to find a cable and hook two Macs together, and boom, they could talk to each other. Windows never really achieved that simplicity. And even to this day, with their horrible workgroup technology, you still can't do it. You have to use a modem or a router to pull it off. And then it's a super duper pain in the ass. It's all these technical DOS statements you're still typing in. Remember, they keep telling you DOS was going to disappear? We'll go install Windows 10. DOS shows up first, and then Windows launches. They've never made good on that promise. But after Windows 95, even though 98 was pretty cool, the lack of innovation started to show up because Apple was no longer a piece of competition. The whole world had gone Windows. Very few of us ever hung on to our Apple roots, right? But Apple had to work hard. And the only reason why Windows started having problems was because the Apple switched over to Unix. You had Steve Ballmer, right? Crazy lunatic Steve Ballmer get up and try to take a piss on Apple. And he said it was a warmed over mock kernel, which is a Unix brand. He said, oh, it's just a piece of crap version of Unix. Now everyone knows after Vista, once Vista came out, everybody knew it was just a junker. You know, and then this crazy Windows 8 came out, which they won't even support anymore. They still support Windows 7, but they're not supporting 8 anymore. And they're offering everyone a free upgrade to 10. If you have 7 and above, I believe. Microsoft has only innovated to the degree they've ever had to. And Apple is now taking the place of Microsoft in terms of edgy, amazing operating systems. But every version of their operating system that comes out, they tell you there's hundreds of features, but I'm telling you, I use a computer more than most people. I use the features more than most people. I run terminal software and get into the bowels of my computer, and I can tell you what, I can't see any of the upgrades. Hundreds of features? Oh, really? Where are they? Because I couldn't count 10. But the fanboys of the world are the reason why. And most of them are probably PR firms that these companies hire to go after you on public forums to make sure that there's no sentiment that ever builds up consciousness that anything needs to improve in life. Now, does a corporation really have responsibility to us as human beings? No, they don't. They really don't. If Apple just said, screw you guys, we're just going to make it this. It's going to be the Lamborghini 1975 Countach, and it's never going to upgrade. You can just make a choice otherwise. Well, the only thing I can say is some kid in his basement is going to blow them away in a decade. And everyone's going to move over to this kid's operating system in a decade. And all of the files that you have from that past operating system are going to be lost, incompatible. Maybe someone writes a little port utility so you can keep your files. But we're going to move away from these brands to the best of our ability. But we're going to have to move through this juggernaut of inertia, which is yesterday, owning our past, right? If all your photographs are in these other operating systems and these other utilities, and you're just an average user and you have no idea how to get your photos out of iPhoto, you're going to have a hard time. You better print them into books, right? But I find that even with a couple of my closest friends, I just had one the other day where I have a product in my house, and the product was hastily made, had some serious flaws in it. It had flaws like crazy, and I pointed this flaw out, and I was just making conversation. So isn't this really weird that this thing has a weird flaw in it? And look at this other stuff; it's all messed up. I just think it's, how did it get this way? How did they even release this? Where did this come from? And a friend of mine who doesn't realize that they're a fanboy started to accuse me of being negative and saying, why do you have to be negative about it? I'm like, what are you talking about? Negative. I'm simply saying this has a flaw. Look at the other ones in my house. They're different than this one, and this one has a flaw. And I'm not angry at it. I'm just pointing out an interesting observation on this product because I have to live with it every single day of my life. And we got into an argument about it. I couldn't believe my eyes. I just was like, why are we arguing? Why is this getting so hot? And why are you taking this personal? Why are you taking criticism of this product personally? I didn't mention your name. I didn't mention you in association with this thing. I didn't say, isn't it stupid how people like this thing? I like this thing too, but it's just got some flaws in it, and I would make it a little bit better. Maybe I should swap it out for one that doesn't have this flaw. And this is what happens online. Now, there's brand loyalty and feature loyalty to these brands that we talk about. And then there's irrational loyalty towards the people that run these companies. Now, I will say that working closer to the bowels of Steve Jobs' life and the people that surrounded him and being involved in their objectives and hearing, well, we hear what you're saying, because I would always send stuff to Apple to put in their operating systems and put into their development environments. There's a lot of Xcode's abilities that I gave them. And this is like 1999, 2000, 2001. I used to send 10 features. I would create 10 new features for OS 10 every year, starting about, I guess it was about 2001, and I used to do it for about a decade after that. And I would draw them in Photoshop, taking pictures of the last operating system, and then I'd mock up the interfaces and fully explain the features. But now they've built loyalty into the individuals that run these companies. And the sad thing is they've picked some bad leaders. I have no idea who runs Microsoft now. I don't know. I don't even know who the CEO is of Microsoft. Isn't that weird? After Gates left, I don't remember who took over. We know he took over Apple because Steve Jobs pioneered getting on stage and giving presentations. Whoever follows his footsteps is going to have to get on stage and give presentations, right? I think they've made a horrible mistake with their choice, and I think it's very evident in the company's performance, innovation, lack of innovation. The idea that you can just hire from within and replace a great man like Steve Jobs is crazy. You can't. You're going to have to go on a search for individuals with the same sort of background that Steve has, the same sort of passion for the brand that Steve had. And they're out there, trust me. People who actually use the computers, who have a history of using the computers, who are in touch with the desires because they have friends and clients that use the computers, and they see it from a consumer standpoint, they see it from a professional use standpoint. But the problem is the fanboy disease starts at the corporate level and it spreads into the political levels, into the other weird agendas like political correctness. I doubt that you would argue with me that the political correctness of the world is doing anything other than destroying the world. It's getting rid of free speech. It's getting rid of your ability to think for yourself and express yourself without feeling like someone's going to be attacking you. And what you have to do is fight it. You don't have to be rude, and you don't have to bring up all your personal opinions in the middle of a public forum. You don't want to just go to a restaurant and start talking about your political affiliation, because it's probably the wrong forum to do so. But if someone asks your opinion, you should be able to give your opinion. But I think that there's a lot of folks in the world right now that are on the precipice of hating their life. Not just disliking it, but utterly hating their life. And what I find is that people who are on the precipice of hating their life, or who are well within the envelope of hating their life, are these fanboys. What do I mean by that? Well, what if you are trying to manage your life? You're trying to be positive, but you barely can do it. You don't like your job. You don't like the lack of vision of your future, because the world's always chaotic and crazy. And so anything that comes into your brain that is negative on any stretch of analysis, right? You need to shut it down, because you start going, hey, don't be negative around me, because I'm already struggling with my own internal negativity about everything in my life. I fear the world. I fear war. I fear the economy. I fear politicians. I fear taxation for existing through Obamacare. And so if you start to be negative around me, I only see it as a negative. I don't see it as a constructive criticism to make the world better. And what I find is interesting is, from time to time, we'll make comments about things as human beings that we really aren't qualified to repair. But, in the end, we simply say, well, shouldn't the economy be more stable than it is? Shouldn't I be able to have the American dream? Shouldn't I be able to graduate college without $100,000 in debt? And shouldn't that college be held responsible for making a degree that actually marries a career? You don't know how to fix those things. You don't know why they are the way they are, but you're saying, look, this seems to be very unfair. And it seems to be responsible for an amazing amount of negativity and loss in the world. And some people will try to argue that you shouldn't say those things. But what does that do? Their insecurities in life and their fear of life and their lack of knowledge about life has made them docile to failure and mediocrity. And essentially the decline of society, the decline in products that you use. By being a fanboy, you encapsulate failure and you protect it. Like a parent trying to protect their child during a car crash, right? When you put your arm over in front of your kid, you try to steer the car so your kid doesn't get part of the impact, right? Except your kid is not a wonderful being. In a fanboy's world, it is the inequities of whatever is being discussed. We've become a bunch of babies. We've become a bunch of pussies. This is what we've become. We're unwilling to fight for what's right anymore. Because the very fabric of what we're doing with our life, I think, is struggling in a big way. Just the strategic resources of life are now starting to become more and more difficult to attain. Being in your 40s, just so you guys know, for those of you who aren't in your 40s or haven't passed your 40s, and for those of you who are over 40, you're going to totally understand what I'm saying. It's a hell of a lot different than it was being in your 40s back in the 70s. In the 70s in America, you could find a job. I have no idea what it was like in Europe. But in the 70s in America, you could find a job and you could survive beautifully well and easy. No matter how non-technical you were in the world, you could sell a car, you could build a car, you could build a house, you could serve pie, and you could make a living and live. The standard of living was single income household. And even with just a basic level of understanding of life and some discipline, your wife could stay home and raise the children until the kids went into school long enough that she could go get her job. By the way, when I did my parenting episode, I made it sound like my dad was not at the house. It sounded like my mom raised me by herself. That wasn't the case. My parents were together till I was about 10. So my mom raised me, but I didn't mean to exclude my father's participation there. He was there too. I was just trying to say that my mom was able to stay home with me until I was probably about 8, and then she went off and got into the workforce and never quit, and lived a beautiful life in her before retirement. She did exactly what she wanted to do with her life. I think that if I'm talking to you from one citizen of the world to another citizen of the world, I think it would go without saying, although we don't say it enough, folks, we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do to fix this planet. And it's always probably been the case, but now we have the internet to gestate and harmonize this thinking. To, the 60s, everybody dropped acid around the world, and because acid brought them to a central point of peace. Without talking to each other across borders and between states, between cities, everyone seemed to harmonize this consciousness, right? There's a lot of meditative guides in the world that say that there is a frequency of peace. And when the population of the world gets in that frequency, beautiful things occur. And the internet is the way we're doing it now, right? I just need to tell you guys, I am utterly and completely humbled by any compliment I get for these videos. I don't expect it. A lot of times I doubt the integrity, or not integrity, but I doubt the validity and usefulness of some of these videos when I get done with them. And so, I just want to say thank you for any of you who've connected and shared that in a comment, and I'm not trying to solicit comments from you guys. I just want to say personally thank you for all the encouragement for these kind of things. And I'm going to hit some for some of you. I'm going to miss some for some of you. And, I apologize to those of you who are very, when I go into more historical subjects and I get some things wrong, I'm going to try to do what I can to correct the integrity of the information, right? By annotating or replacing the videos, right? I just replaced my cancer video. What I would like to get into your brain from this particular episode, I could have made this about broadcast speak and just gone after broadcast speak, but I don't think I could do it for an hour. I would like to heighten and begin a movement in all of you, and hopefully you can spread this through comments, that we need to demonize fanboy tactics. We need to demonize it such that if you see fanboyism going on, right, where something is most evidently not great in the world, not helping mankind in the world, a brand that starts dying that you love, that is, again, more than just a brand, right? When you buy a television, and say you buy a Sony, and for whatever reason there's a problem with it, and you want to, you could move to Mitsubishi, you could move to a Samsung. There's a bunch of options you have in televisions to change what you're doing. But in operating systems especially, and I don't mean to obsess on computers, but it's an easy one, I think, for most of us to get behind. If Microsoft doesn't innovate, or if Apple doesn't innovate, you don't have a choice to go anywhere else. There's a few Unix guys who go Ubuntu, or you're going to go maybe to the Android OS, the Chrome OS, or whatever. But again, if these brands were to outposition each other's brands and they get at the top of the pyramid, I guarantee you, if you're on that brand, you're going to start experiencing a lag in innovation and a lack of innovation. And it's going to affect your life. It's going to affect your personal life when you can't do things that you want to do. And it's going to stifle your creativity. I think it's amazing that people don't put a lot of requirements on their governments. We have over here in America, we have the Republicans and the Democrats. In Europe, it's usually a Labor Party and a Liberal Party or something like that. But these parties don't help their citizens ever, right? Remember my question, what has your government done for you during the entire life of the existence of your life to help you out? In America, the only people that have been helped in America, and then I think they've been counter-helped right after it happened, was the civil rights movement in the 60s. The desegregation of America was the only thing I remember that looked good on paper. Maybe seatbelts. Minimum wage, well, the government's struggled with trying to help that thing out, and it doesn't really work. They gave so many tax breaks to these multi-trillionaire corporations that they should be able to pay everyone really, really well. If the government simply said, hey, Walmart, we'll give you a $10 billion tax credit, but in return, you pay your employees better. You're going to fold that at least, 5 of the 10 billion into better wages. You don't pay a kid in Tennessee $2.50 an hour. You pay them better. And you're going to provide health benefits instead of pushing everybody into welfare like they do. But that doesn't happen, does it? Every time I see someone from my little hometown like something on the Walmart Facebook page, right? Get the feed of what people have liked, and every once in a while I'll see someone, hooray, yoop-de-doo, I love Walmart. It kills me how ignorant that human being is. Walmart is the single reason why my hometown has lost 90% of its personal business. My little hometown used to spend money, right? And the shoe shop guy was a citizen of the town, and you gave that guy money, well, that shoe shop guy would buy jeans across the street, and the jeans money would go over to the grocery store, which was owned by one of 4 families, right? And that would go off to the restaurant that's loaned by and then it would go to rent, and the money would just go in a circle in my hometown and keep the town just bustling and amazing. And then this life-sucking, anti-American company came in, Walmart. And now every dime that would go into these personal businesses and keep that money going in a circle, literally the money in my hometown, if you just took the computer balance sheet of each individual account, all the account numbers of people in the town, and you ran an animation, you created an animation of where the money went. All you had was the money kept going to different people's accounts within the town. That's all it did, right? And now what happens? Someone earns money somehow in my hometown. I don't even know how people pay their bills in my hometown. But now they walk into Walmart, they put it in their bank account, and it goes overseas to the bankers of Europe. It goes overseas to third world countries who manufacture the products. And a little bit goes to the family that owns Walmart now, which is just bickering over the settlement of their grandfathers. They don't participate in the company at all. So that is like an eyedropper going in reverse. It's sucking out the life of these little towns in the Midwest. If you are so much as related to or part of a small town in the Midwest, you need to boycott Walmart for the rest of your life, and boycott every corporation in your hometown that isn't owned by someone in your hometown or a local town member in your state. You don't go to Subway Sandwich. Eat crappier food if you have to give the money to someone in your hometown. And encourage everyone in your hometown not to give it out to these major corporations that just send it away. And just it'll amaze you. It almost like a magic trick. The money stays in the hometown, and everyone seems to have enough money to buy cars, to buy homes, to buy products, because the money's never leaving the town. It goes in a big circle. And someone might be able to accumulate wealth, right? Maybe you'll actually have something in your bank account, in your savings account. Maybe you'll actually be able to amass something for retirement because you keep a little dollar. For every $10 that goes in a circle, you take one off and put it in your bank account or some other investment. But I want to make sure that we expose fanboyism as a disease, and it's happening globally. I don't care where you are on planet Earth. We have to annihilate it. We have to chastise it. Because if there was ever a fascist cabal going on planet Earth, it's anyone who engages in fanboyism. And I don't care if you work for a PR firm and you're part of this from an automated standpoint. You're the disingenuous fake fanboys. You're the scum of the earth, man. You're the scum of the earth. And you know you're the scum of the earth. Retire. Go to some other profession. Sabotage your own organization. Help them out while you go to work to get your 8-hour paycheck, then go home for 4 hours and expose them. Expose the arteries of the fake movie review places, fake product review places. Expose them. Expose the Chinese companies. Expose the Indian companies. Expose whoever you're getting it from. Undermine the whole thing. If you want to watch the world burn, because that's the kind of person you are, let's burn down the corporations first and just see what happens. Just see how the people take back over the consciousness and innovation of the world. And then everything in your household that you live off of, to entertain yourself, to sustain yourself, you'll watch it. It'll get better. It'll get better. It's really funny. I have this ongoing joke with my friends that I think that traffic lights have become ridiculous in the world. Traffic lights are so utterly ignorant about how to manage traffic. The programs that prioritize one street over another during the day, and it switches its schedule, and sometimes it's even just timed in the middle of the night where you're waiting for a red light and there's no one around for miles. It's ridiculous that we put up with this gateway to progress. How many of you hate being in traffic? It's a priority in life as everyone sits in traffic and loses literally days and days out of their life. You take your 365 days out of the year and total up how many hours you're sitting in traffic because of stupid traffic lights. I guarantee you're probably losing half a month of your life. Multiply that times however many years you're living as a driver, right? It's not getting any better, I'll tell you that much. There's innovation that needs to happen in every quadrant of life. Music sucks now. We have literally made it okay for people that can't sing to get into a studio and auto-tune their voice. We've made it okay to buy a ticket to a concert and the person standing on stage is pretending to sing over their own backup track that's been crafted in a studio. And just because they cut off the backup track and give them a live mic and they go, "Good evening, New York. Hey, guy in the front, I'm this microphone's live." And as soon as the song starts back up, the backup track is taking over the microphone and they're not really singing. People have exposed the original singing tracks of people like Britney Spears, and it should be an eye-opener. They've exposed Madonna's. Madonna was the one that absolutely pioneered fake singing on stage. That's why Milli Vanilli was so pissed off when they got busted for faking their album. Because they were like, we're not the first one to this game, folks. We just got caught doing it. Now, their exception was they didn't sing their album either. But if people are willing to watch WWF wrestling, fake-ass wrestling, fake stories, fake comic book characters, why the hell did Milli Vanilli ever take anything on the chin? One of the guys threw himself out a window and committed suicide. The lead singer. He committed suicide because of the humiliation of that process. He was an actor on stage giving you a great performance. And everybody else is okay with it. And I'm not saying that was a great thing for them to do. They should have just embraced it and said, yeah, we're sorry. This is how our band's put together. But our music's fantastic if you're in that era of music. And we're going to give you a good show if you show up. You can make fun of us the entire time you're enjoying our music, right? But this idea that society had integrity and that integrity was going to push out these fakes was so funny. And now what they do is absolutely the standard around the world. How many times do you see live performers on television and they're just lip syncing? All the Grammys lip synced. It's atrocious. And because it doesn't sound like the album, people feel like it's a live performance. Just watch mouths. Watch how they grab microphones, and cover up their mouth. Or the cameras are cutting so intensely that you could never see their mouth move for more than a split second. That's one thing that Saturday Night Live does great. Saturday Night Live says, sorry, performers, you get on our program, you're going to really sing. So if you can't sing, don't sign up for the gig. Now, unfortunately, Saturday Night Live is one of these products that's turned into sort of a crappy show nowadays. It's unbelievable. They're still trying to find their mojo with all brand new writers and brand new actors. I wish them the best, right? It's one of my favorite shows on planet Earth. For those of you who are looking for something new in life, Fanboys are like a metal detector for your opportunities in life. If you find an organization that is at the tip of perceivable excellence, but you look at that product and you're like, hey, I don't like this product anymore. It used to be great, but now it sucks. There's a couple things you could do. What is happening is your metal detector is going off, where you see fanboys having to prop up these companies through horrible acts of innovation. That's a cue. You could do two things. You can go work for that company and try to make a difference. And I guarantee you, once you get into a big giant company like Apple, it's going to be tough moving through the ranks. And you're probably going to get in trouble for mentioning that anything is wrong, because within the walls of Apple, they have their own fanboyism. They might just wake up every morning like the Corvette guy and go, well, we sell every model. Apple stock's crashing today. It's been crashing all week. It's fallen like $10. They're now just trying to open up new markets to sell subpar products to brand new markets to prop up the stock. They're promising us things like electric cars 2 or 3 years out. But the other thing you can do with this metal detector going off is to simply say, if it's a product you think you can get involved with and you have some knowledge in it, or maybe you don't have any knowledge, but you're excited about it, right? Go create a replacement. Go create a replacement for the product you can't stand. Create a new destiny for yourself. The reason why Disneyland exists is because Walt Disney would take his daughters to a park. And he'd sit on the bench and he'd watch his daughters play. And he thought, parks are only for children. And that guy was a fun-loving guy, right? He saw the desires of kids, and he built amazing movies for them. But he sat in that park, as he mentioned in his own memoirs. He said, in his own interviews about the subject, he said, I sat there and I thought, isn't there a way to create a park It's sort of like a carnival, but it integrates these storylines that I make in these films such that the adults can be invited to the game as well. And he had this idea, I believe, in the just about 1936 era. And he incubated it for a long time. And he started doing what we did in the Building UFO episode. He started designing something on paper that seemed ludicrous. You know, guy is in charge of a, think about the math on this. He is the utter genius who created an animation studio that makes the world's most famous animated movies on planet Earth. And even though he's an amazing animator, what would make you think for a split second that a guy with pen and paper knowledge of animation, camera building for parallaxing and that kind of stuff, and putting audio lip sync down to cartoons. Those are the major innovations that he did in that industry, among others, among the characters that we all love. But he built an amusement park. How phenomenal is that? And you know what? He was successful from the first day. You know, there was over 1 million visitors to that park in the first 30 days in 1955, and the park was probably a third the size and probably a third the fun. And his idea was so pure and so raw and so amazing. We had 2 other franchises evolve in America, at least, that were theme-based. We had Six Flags. It was Six Flags, which is all over the Six Flags over Texas, Six Flags over California. And then we had a couple spin-offs. There's amusement parks all over the place. It was all stemming off of his theme-based model. And to the degree you don't have the themes on top of the rides, it's to the degree you don't actually enjoy the rides. Now it's sort of like who can make the biggest puke machine, right? We can be the next Walt Disney in whatever we love. But we're going to have to get out of this fanboy envelope. And we're going to have to demonize fanboying. When I take the time out of my life, which I rarely do, to post anything online within the forms of the technologies that I enjoy, you know, if I feel like I'm like, look, I need to, I want this product to succeed is the theme of everything that I write. And I try to not to be emotional about things. And there's video games that I love that 10 years ago were phenomenal. The franchises still exist to this day, but the designers are really lacking any innovation. They're just cutting and pasting the expansion packs forward, and it's become boring. And now these companies have told their community developers online, their forum managers, to say anyone posts anything bad about the product, you need to erase it off the forums. Now, I would support that in one realm. If they are like, look, we are addressing all these issues, just keep it off the forums in the meantime until the next expansion comes out and we're actually going to solve a lot of these problems they're talking about. The world will really, really suck if we let fanboys win. If we let PR firms bully us within these products, it's going to suck really, really bad. And I don't think we can assume how bad it's going to get. I think it can get infinitely bad. And if that consciousness starts to spread to all things, we'll have something a bit like the Inquisition. During the Inquisition, you had these mercenaries who worked for the Catholic Church in various countries, and they would comb neighborhoods and they'd say, who here isn't a Christian? Meaning, who here isn't giving their 10% to Rome? And if anyone... at first they came through and they were like, oh, what are you guys talking about? You know, doesn't matter what I believe. And then they started persecuting people, kidnapping people, and torturing them, killing them. And then that word started to spread. And then the paranoia started to rise up where families were essentially reporting other families to signify their loyalty and to avoid being persecuted and to avoid being questioned. They demonstrated their loyalty by turning in those who they... just arbitrarily picked in most cases. They had no evidence that someone didn't believe it. They just accused their neighbor down the street of being one of these people. And so, you know, they were automatically validated as loyalists. Look, I'm telling on someone for you. I'm definitely loyal to you. And it pounded into the consciousness of man this horrible apparatus, which is the religion that exists out there, that demonizes your God, that makes man bigger than man, right? Class structures built into the Catholic Church. And now we have these too big to fail corporations. We have too big to fail CEOs that are horrible, that are driving their company's stocks into the ground. What's pure lunacy, let me just say that much, is that these CEOs will drive their companies into the ground, drive their stock shares into the ground. And these shareholders, these board of directors, sit there and watch it happen. And because they have this loyalty out of complete irrational thought, they keep these horrible leaders in place because they think that replacing the leader is going to be devastating to the fanboys and show a sign of weakness. But every time you watch a baseball game in America and the pitcher completely keeps pitching home runs to the opposite team and losing the game, well, the coach yanks him out and says, I don't know what's going on with you today, but you're just not pitching right. We're losing because of your issue today. Maybe you have a sore elbow. Maybe you're just tired. Maybe you're emotionally disturbed because of something we don't know about. And they swap out the pitcher, and all of a sudden we get strikes. And the team starts winning again. So in that forum, it's common practice to replace the failures with winners. And there's no hard feelings, right? The next game, that pitcher comes back out and starts pitching. Now, you can't swap CEOs like that, but you can definitely try someone new. Apple didn't even try to find a CEO that was better than Tim Cook. Tim Cook has no record in his background of being a technologist, of being a UI designer, of being an innovative thinker. But he's now running the company into the ground. What does a person who's low on the ladder do in a corporation to get their project greenlit, to get told that they have done a great job? They talk to the CEO who looks at their product and says, yes, this product over that product. And, oh, you guys have done a great job. Good job. And so they get on stage and they fake it. It's nauseating. It's frustrating. We want the world to be a better place. Well, there's two ways to do it. It's create original ideas to make the world better, but keep the old ideas that worked and the old standards of excellence going. And fanboys are absolutely anti-innovation. Fanboys are the reason why things don't get better. They're the reason why things get worse. And we're subjugated to them. But with your online power, with your consciousness heightened, I think we can wipe these guys off the face of the planet. I know you feel me. I know I've gone in circles and pounded this one into the ground, but it's important to me because I think I have personally seen, without question, great products turn into crappy products. Again, there's some companies like Lamborghini that keep it going. And I think that I'm sure Lamborghini will go through a drought as well. I think they did. They created a bunch of kind of skunky cars in the 90s that were too heavy and weren't fast enough. But again, I didn't drive them, so I can't really have an opinion there. But I think that's what happened. But they're well on top now, let me tell you. So all companies are going to go ebb and flow, and hopefully Apple will make some changes and make the company better. I didn't mean to make this an Apple-centric conversation, but it's one that is near and dear to my heart. I definitely witnessed the rebirth of Apple in the late 90s. Some of you hate the product still. But I would say, coming from both sides of the fence, right, working Windows and Apple together all day long, I could still say that pound for pound, Apple's products are better still. I don't help my Apple friends do much in life, but I constantly lose my life and my hours of my day helping PC people. You know, a funny little story that I'll close off on. When I worked in the Bay Area, I found a company up there in the database industry when I first started getting into corporate database programming about 91. They had 75 employees in this building, all running Macintosh computers. We didn't have a dedicated IT person. And so in technical support, which I took care of the big corporate clients, I just became the IT guy. I knew how to do it. Mail servers. We had mail servers that called our UK headquarters and exchange emails through something called QuickMail. It was great. And then a senior VP of marketing came in, sales, not marketing. And he only knew Windows, and he didn't want to be bothered with this Apple stuff. And he convinced the CEO of the company to transfer all of the sales staff into Windows machines. Immediately, they had to hire a full-time Windows guy to take care of about 10 people. This guy got paid probably around $70,000 a year. Just $70,000 a year out of the company to take care of 10 computers. Instantaneously, this guy was so backlogged with PC requests that you had to stand in line. You had to have days and days to just get a printer hooked up to your laptop. Eventually, he got so overwhelmed because they got more PCs in the company. About 50% of the company went PC. Their staff swelled to 3. to take care of what may have been maybe 75, well, sorry, it would be half that, right? It's about 40 computers. The inefficiency of that platform was evident to the bottom line of the company. The software they were running on that machine existed on the Mac, but the guy was stubborn. He was afraid of not knowing something. He didn't want to leave his familiarity bubble. The Windows or the Apple machines, no one needed any help ever. New products would come in, Microsoft operating system upgrades, the Microsoft Office upgrades would come in, people just swapped the disks out of their machine, and boom, they were upgraded, no problem. And I've watched this my entire life. I want to say to you that the thing that you want in life, the balance of nature that you want with technology and innovation in life is the following. At no point should you have to manage the tool that realizes your ideas. The tool should be out of the way, right? Your computer should work completely. You should be able to hook it to a printer and print immediately. You should be able to use the software and intuitively understand the software. At no point should you be struggling with the software unless you want to get into like 3D graphics and you're trying to learn Maya, which you'll never learn all of Maya. But other than those really crazy, super technical exceptions to the rule, we want the tools out of the way because our destiny goes through those tools. We want the destiny of our lives and the wherewithal that we've developed for these tools to be ubiquitous, right? We want to drive our cars to work and not worry about priming the gas tank with a little bit of gas and then hitting the starter. And, we don't want to have to pedal the car. We would like power steering to exist. We want electric windows. We want the car just to run until it dies. Maybe a little bit of repair here and there, but in the end, it's like repair for a day, boom, I'm back on the road and I'm going. And my destiny in the car, getting from point A to point B, is what I'm concerned about, what I'm pushing forward. But the second you want to complain about the car having issues, well, there's a bunch of fanboys that'll come out of nowhere, and some brands, not all brands, and they will say, you're stupid for wanting that ubiquity. And it's crazy. So if you don't like the way things are, maybe you should go out and replace it. That's what I tried to do. Obviously, it's really hard to replace a massive software company, operating system hardware company. It's just not possible really easily. But I think that through social pressures and demonizing those that hold back the future, as if the future is not going to happen, I think that's what's amazing. We wonder how the Middle Ages and the Dark Ages continue for 1,000 years, right? Not technical on paper, but think about the lack of innovation from, say, 500 AD to say 1500 AD. We barely innovated. And now we've got a beautiful moment in nature, a beautiful moment in the organic development of mankind to get there much faster, to get to the moon, to get to Mars, to figure out where the hell we are, who we are, and do it through pure research. So, I know you feel me. That's where we're going to end it. mkulturaradio.com for all the feeds. If you're coming through video, there's a podcast. If you're coming through podcast, there's a video. Our Facebook page is mainly geared at the original show format, which is a lot different than Deep Thoughts. We're probably going to be making some new episodes over the course of the next month, but we're probably down to, I would say, 2 episodes a month now with the normal show. So Deep Thoughts will be coming out like a freight train because there's still plenty of ideas. So you guys have been fantastic with your ideas, and I read every single comment that you write. We've only had, well, the one thing I would like to say, and I probably won't go in anyone's ear that needs to hear it, but if you have, we had an individual go up on one of the videos and start posting every split second that he thought of something. And he filled one video with probably 30 comments, and I pushed them all out because no one else's comments were being viewed because he had consumed 4 or 5 pages of comments instead of perhaps writing them off at a word processor on the side, making one giant comment or sending me a private message or posting in the discussion area of YouTube, which would have been preferred. I will fairly analyze any critiques you guys have, and when you're right, you're right. There are a lot of things that are up for grabs in terms of interpretation, but regardless, I respect your opinions. I really, really do, even if you're going at me. But I would say that, just as a request, because of my personality, you need to know, if you feel like I'm wrong, you don't have to go into, this is just a suggestion. You can do this if you want, but a lot of people come out very hostile when they think I'm wrong or they think I'm being dumb in a video. Now, I've definitely said some things that are obviously very offensive to certain groups, so I will understand when someone gets emotional about their God or whatever. I understand. But a lot of times it's just one thing could go one way or the other, and we're both bringing our impressions of things, and they get super emotional in the comments. I'd say this is very rare, but it happens, and I let them all through. You know, a lot of you guys, I'm actually pre-approving your comments. So when you make a couple great comments that are very productive, I mark the little checkbox that when you guys link me videos, it puts it in a spam folder, and I don't always realize that there's one in the spam folder. And so I have to review it before I let it out. But most of you guys who are consistent, I just mark you guys as pre-approved. So a lot of times, if you post something and it doesn't show up, that means I just haven't hit the pre-approved button. But the second, I'm telling you right now, if you share a video and it's right on target, usually from that point forward, I'll go ahead and certify your comments moving forward. But I review all the additional comments that you make, so if someone goes crazy and tries to spam us, it just won't happen. So I hate censoring anything. I think it's just the wrong way to go. You know, a lot of guys have turned comments off in their videos because they're tired of being berated. We could reach a point of popularity where that happens, but we have hundreds and hundreds of comments on the Flat Earth video that I don't see because once you reply to each other, I don't get a notice, you know. So if you're replying to someone else's comment and talking to me, I don't see it at all. And it's just, there's not enough time in the day for me to go into every individual reply and see everything. So if I'm not responding and you're replying to someone else's reply, that's why. Just so you know. Anyway, you feel me? I hope you have a great day. Hope you've had a great day. I believe in you like you couldn't imagine. I think we all have within us the greatness that is mankind. And that's why I feel like, you know, I think most of us truthers, we're just trying to say, just entertain me for 1 second and point your eyeballs here. And let me tuck in your ear while you're looking in that direction. I want you to maintain your individual thought and your individual opinions, but just look in that direction for a second and hear me out and feel me out, right? And then correct me or give me a better impression. And I think that's what we've got going. It's beautiful with the deep thoughts. They're so freaking long that we don't get a lot of shallow people replying. You know, if you're going to make it through a 2-hour video with anybody, whether or not they're completely wrong or right, doesn't matter. You have a deep thought mind. So again, I thank you guys for joining. Please subscribe, please like, and I'll see you in the next video. Over and out.